Who are these people?
Collin, with our country going to shit, empire death and all that, what do you think the other countries might do? They might choose another group to hang out with. They're tired of our table. They're gonna go play with another. Does anyone get that reference in chat? Nope, no, just me. You know.
Yeah.
You got new countries. You're the BRICS. They're joining the battle. They're coming in. They're getting here.
I thought, you know what? I said that, you know, for this clip, this sound like that might be a one-time thing. I think basically whenever we mention BRICS, we should just play.
Yeah, I'm down. So, anyone know what these flags are in chat? You got to get all three, though. You got to get all three.
Yeah, let us know in the chat if you know without checking online.
Cheating, right?
Cheating. Which countries these?
And we'll know. Collin's a teacher. He's got eyes in the back of his head. He knows. You know.
Actually,
but anyway,
if you were to ask,
it's already.
I would not.
It's already here, but the chat's 7 seconds and behind, yeah. So they already had their time.
Yeah.
So, new development: bank de-dollarizing, adding Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and Zimbabwe as members. This is from the Orinoco Tribune. This is Ben Norton. You know, he's not great on every take, but he's good on a lot of this BRICS stuff. So I'll take him on that. But he writes, the BRICS block new development bank, an alternative to the U.S.-dominated World Bank, is de-dollarizing its loans, promoting local currencies, and adding new members, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and Zimbabwe. So, the BRICS bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa is expanding and building a new economic architecture to challenge the dominance of the U.S. dollar. One of the most important institutions created by BRICS is the New Development Bank. This is a global South-oriented alternative to the World Bank, which is locally in and essentially controlled by the United States. So in March 2023, the NDB inaugurated its new chief, Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil from the South American nation's leftist Workers' Party. Rousseff has stressed that the NDB's goals are financing infrastructure investments and helping our members combat poverty, create jobs, and promote environmentally sustainable development. She also welcomed several more countries to join the bank. Current NDB members include the 5 BRICS nations, as well as Bangladesh, the UAE, and Egypt. Uruguay is already in the process of joining. So it feels like the Avengers are assembling. You know, so look at all those flags. Brazil, Russia, India, China. This is Zimbabwe, right?
No, that's South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah.
And then
no,
I don't know either. I don't know this one or this one. Someone can tell me in the chat.
The last one's Egypt.
Egypt,
I believe.
Okay, with the little bird boy. So Rousseff said NDB leadership approved these countries' membership's request, and the decision will officially be announced in August at the Summit of BRICS Head of State, which is tentatively planned to meet in South Africa. The new NDB president disclosed this news while Argentina's economic minister, Sergio Massa, was visiting the bank's headquarters in Shanghai, China. So this is, I mean, almost all of the world powers outside of ours, you know, and NATO countries. So, but yeah, I mean, they're literally going to China, then Shanghai, then South Africa. We're jet setting on this. So we get to Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, who helped found the BRICS during his first 2 terms in the 2000s, returned to office in January 2023. Lula has played a key role in advocating for Argentina to join BRICS. In a summit of South American leaders in Brazil in May, Lula also endorsed Venezuela joining the bloc. Right? So he's trying to get all these characters retconned into this Smash Bros. Game, you know? He's like, we gotta have Luigi, we gotta have Mario, you know? Like, he's doing it up. So on May 31st, we concluded the 8th NDB annual meeting in Shanghai on the theme, Shaping a New Era of Global Development. We thank the Board of Governors for their guidance and insights toward building an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable future for EMDCs. So, you know, there they all are, sitting pretty, you know. So on May 30 and 31st, the New Development Bank held its annual meeting, the institution's 8th since it began operation in 2015. NDB President Rousseff used the special occasion to reiterate that the bank's objective is eventual de-dollarization. Uh-oh, Collin. That's not good.
Not the US.
No. The short-term goal is to offer 30% of NDB loans in local currencies. This would be an increase from its present rate of 22%. In April, Rousseff announced that the NDB plans to transition away from the US dollar, pledging that nearly 1/3 of its loan book will be financed in the currencies of member countries by 2026. So, new chief of the BRICS New Development Bank, Brazil's leftist ex-president Dilma Rousseff, revealed that they are gradually moving away from the US dollar, promising at least 30% of loans in local currency of members. So, what does that mean, you think, Care Bear? Anything?
At least
I'm interested in the 30% of loans thing. That's interesting.
I'm actually not sure what. If
Me
anyone
either.
in the chat has
Somebody with number knowledge would go explain. But we'll have this lady do some of the talking for us. So.
At the same time, it is necessary to find ways to avoid foreign exchange risk and other issues, such as being dependent on a single currency, such as the US dollar. The good news is that we are seeing many countries choosing to trade using their own currencies. China and Brazil, for instance, are agreeing to exchange with RMB and the Brazilian real. At the NDB, we have committed to it in our strategy. For the period from 2022 to 2026, NDB has to lend 30% in local currency, and so 30% of our loan book will be financed in the currencies of our member countries. That will be extremely important to help our countries avoid exchange rate risks and shortage in finance that hinder long-term investments.
Okay.
So, does that explain?
It sounds like it's basically, it sounds like it's a way to kind of prevent what potentially happens in Africa a lot. Well, not a lot, but it has happened, you know, that they default.
Right.
You know, when they essentially run out of money. So,
yep. So by diversifying its use of currencies, the NDB not only seeks to weaken the bloc's dependence on the dollar, but also hopes to help developing countries avoid painful fluctuations in exchange rates. The US dollar is the global reserve currency, so Washington's domestic monetary policy has an impact on the world economy, a phenomenon known as the Triffin dilemma. Right? You ever heard of that, Collin? The Triffin dilemma?
No.
Okay. No. So it's partially the petrodollar stuff, right? Since March 2022, the U.S. Central Bank, the Fed, has aggressively raised interest rates. This has put downward pressure on the currencies of many global South nations, right? This is what you were talking about them defaulting and stuff, right? Making it more expensive to import foreign products and pay off dollar-denominated debt, while also fueling capital flight. So money leaves, doesn't stay, and they're taking all of it anyway. So we need to create a diversified global currency system. Got to diversify your bonds, Collin. You got to diversify them. Rousseff said at the NDB annual meeting, in the future, it is unlikely that one single currency can dominate the world's currency system. Okay, keep that in mind, peoples. We will see more local currency used to settle trade, the NDB president added. So that's what they're going with. that the more of you have, the more options you have, right?
Right.
So here they go.
Then it's gonna be cheaper, like
Yes.
essentially.
Theoretically, it all levels out to common denominators. You know? In NDB's annual meeting opening ceremony, NDB President Dilma Rousseff highlighted the bank's commitment to eradicating poverty and hunger and supporting members' countries' contributions on climate change per the Paris Agreement. So that I'm not as depending on what climate change actions they're talking about, you know, that can be a bit worrying.
Well, but if that's the only thing that worries me, if they're telling themselves to be the World Bank, that's a little concerning to me.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So that's the only thing that
they're at least trying to compete.
So that's what it just sounds like. It kind of compete, but in what way? Like, are they actually going to do something that is actually beneficial to these countries, or is it like, you know, what the World Bank does?
I think they just want to hold their money. Well, what do we need to give you for us to hold your money? That's what this is, in my opinion. You know, and that's what banks do. So it's one thing if you keep track of your banks and how they operate and how they, you know, like some other countries tend to, especially with China and Russia, right? Because the government doesn't want to get ripped off in those situations. So, but you essentially, each country would have to be on it as far as, are they getting the best deal out of it, right? So the new development bank has already issued bonds denominated in China currency, the renminbi. Chinese Vice President Ding Zhuijiang said at the annual meeting of the BRICS Bank that NDB is designed to better serve the emerging economies by financing more infrastructure construction and sustainable projects. Okay, you've talked about this as well, correct? So Rousseff's view that the world is transitioning toward a multipolar currency order has been acknowledged even by some Western mainstream media outlets and analysts. The chair of this editorial board of the Financial Times newspaper, Gillian Tett, implored investors in March to prepare for a multipolar currency world. Okay? So, prominent economist Zoltan Pozsar, dude, that sounds like a wizard. You can't throw Zoltan Pozsar in here and not expect me to be like, that's a wizardy woo boy, you know? Wrote in the Financial Times in January that the unipolar era of U.S. hegemony is over and is placed with a multipolar order of one world, two systems, and possibly more. Pozsar, whom the financial press dubbed a superstar, noted that the pace of de-dollarization appears to have picked up, with more and more BRICS curious countries trading in their own currencies. What does it also mean for our currency, Collin? Yeah. So what does that mean for your, I don't even know what you would call it. Like your worth, your own dollars worth, like a lot of that goes away. Your real estate's worth less, like all that shit.
It takes away the power of US dollar. It doesn't hold the same weight. You know, it just makes me think about like when I've traveled to Africa. It's not to say I don't use a national currency depending on what country that I'm in, but sometimes depending on where I'm at, like I'll say this, like usually if I take a taxi, especially if I'm coming from the airport, oftentimes they prefer that you pay them in US dollars.
Sure. Because that's what they're used to getting, right?
They're used to getting it, but it holds more weight.
Yeah.
In terms of, it has more value than
do some evening out.
Their own currency. So, but leveling out the playing field in this way, you know, elevates the local currency back up and takes some power away from the US dollar. Now, I'm not a money guy, but just thinking of that, while it sounds good in theory, how that's going to work in practice, especially given like a a country like China that holds a good chunk of power with their currency right now over, let's say, I don't know, like I want to say Egypt. Like what it would be interesting to see how they're gonna figure that part out. Especially with the countries that are coming in that are new against countries like basically the original five that hold a lot more weight. So that'll be kind of interesting. And again, I don't know finances, especially, like international currency in that way. So, but yeah, I think it's just that's my concern is like how they're going to even have the level playing field with multi currencies, and then obviously with certain countries that obviously have a lot more strength in their currencies compared to others. That's kind of where my wonder is.
So if less trade is invoiced in US dollars and there's a dwindling recycling of dollar surpluses into traditional reserve assets such as treasuries and gold, right? Gold has been a thing with this. Like,
I love gold,
which is why US wants to get its hands on Gold Coast places and,
Gold Coast, Uganda, which I'll be very interested to see if Uganda
shows up to BRICS if they join the battle. So, that the dollar holds as the international reserve currency could be under assault, Posar warned. Unlike the World Bank, the New Development Bank is a truly multilateral institution, not one dominated by a lone power. The 2014 funding agreement stated that the NDB's initial subscribed capital shall be equally distributed among the founding members, and the voting power of each member shall equal its subscribed shares in the capital stock of the bank. Okay? Which, probably leads to whoever holds more shares has more play, right?
Right.
So, but no country has veto power in the NDB. The NDB founding agreement likewise stated the president of the bank shall be elected from one of the founding members on a rotational basis, and there shall be at least one vice president from each of the other founding members. So they're trying to keep it, everyone gets a say to this, right? As opposed to what the World Bank does and just leaves it to one dude, right?
Right.
So the World Bank is completely different. This institution is essentially controlled by us and physically headquartered in Washington, D.C. The bank clearly states on its website that the United States remains the largest shareholder of the World Bank Group today, right? Boasting that as the only World Bank Group shareholder that retains veto power over certain changes in the bank's structure, the United States plays a unique role in influencing and shaping global development priorities, yada, yada, yada. The bank's website likewise admits traditionally the World Bank president has always been a U.S. citizen nominated by the United States. Okay? So, the United States has 15.81% voting power in the World Bank's group lending arm, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. No other country even remotely comes close, Collin. Right? There's that little graph. Look at this graph. In second place in voting power is Japan with 7.22%. Despite having 4 times the U.S. population, China has a vote share of just 5.6%. Germany has 4.3% and Britain at 3.8%. India, with a population of more than 1.4 billion, is tied with France, which has a population of less than 66 million. Each has 3.81% of the voting power in the World Bank. Russia has a mere 2.8%. Canada has 2.56%, and Italy 2.5%. So this is also a way for China to just back out and Russia to back out of an option for them and have more power elsewhere. So they'll take it. They'll go, yeah, sure. So here's World Bank Group finances, right? Here's how much is in there, right? We got United States with that much, 43 1,847.5. What is this in? I can't tell. Is there like, I would think that would be in like billion. Oh, this is their voting power. Got it.
That's
Okay. Cool.
Zoom in. Yeah, so obviously the United States has almost half of the voting power. Well,
yep. There's those percentages, 16 point something. Yeah. They hold the most compared to everyone else.
Right.
So, but yeah. So the World Bank acts as a kind of neo-colonial institution dominated by the Western powers. It is not so much the World Bank as it is the Washington Bank, along with its Bretton Woods financial sibling, the International Monetary Fund, which is similarly dominated by the U.S. The World Bank is notorious for trapping Global South countries in odious debt. So when debtor countries are unable to pay back the World Bank, the U.S.-controlled institution frequently imposes harsh neoliberal economic policies as part of a structural adjustment program, requiring governments to cut social services, lower wages, slash pensions, reduce spending on healthcare and education, end subsidies, privatize state-owned enterprises, and deregulate markets. So why do you think those countries suck, Collin? Is it because we told them to suck?
Right.
Because they owe us monies?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yet we take their resources, right? Former consultant John Perkins.
Bring them into debt. So it's funny. It's funny now that you say this, because it's like China, and you can make the argument for China, has been criticized for doing this, like putting African countries into certain African countries into debt. But no one ever talks about how the World Bank is involved in putting these countries in the U.S., putting these countries in debt. I don't want to also, but you know what I mean. Like,
oh, I do.
It's always the criticism of China, but never on the U.S. for doing, I would argue, worse stuff. Because at least with China, you can make the argument that they're actually elevating
and giving them power. Like they are giving them power, like in this economic situation.
And taking like a lot of these programs away.
Yep.
And putting them in.
Yep. For sure. I mean, you see that with this, you know, like the fact that they're giving them, you get a vice president automatically.
Right.
As a founding member, you get a VP. So I don't know how much influence that'll have over your country's debt, you know, like, but it's something. So, yeah, but so John Perkins, in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, described the World Bank as an agent of global empire that helps cheat poor countries in the global south out of trillions of dollars and subsequently funnel money into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. Perkins added that the economic hitmen at the World Bank and similar U.S.-dominated institutions play a game as old as empire. So, you know, I mean, classic stuff, pretty much.
Well,
we'll see.
This is kind of sad because a lot of my families at my school work for the World Bank.
Yep.
So,
and your other friends in other countries are going,
let me call the Russians to help.
Like they're, and they got the ability to, they're willing to make friends right now. So,
but in either case, shout out to BRICS.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see basically all these other countries running to be a part of this. and I'm sure more will be coming in the pipeline. So again, their conference is next month. So we definitely are going to report on that when that happens. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, I think, in terms of the beginnings of essentially a new superpower to kind of counter the World Bank. But I also would argue to counter NATO as well.
For sure.
So, it'll be very interesting to see how this develops over the next few years. But yeah.
Yeah.
Go BRICS.
Yeah, go BRICS. Do it. Do it up.
I mean, like, I'm cautious, obviously, given just in them saying like they're not saying model themselves after the World Bank, but given that they want to, I'm still wondering what that means for them in terms of what does that look like for you. But so I think that's the thing that I'm a little curious about. But I think the difference is that they have other countries involved in this. So obviously there has to be a lot more negotiating in that. So I think that in itself seems to be promising, but my concern, but question is how the larger countries that have the most wealth are going to counter the smaller ones that don't have as much.
For
like
sure.
Where's that compromise / balance there?
And I think they've made some steps towards that, at least in this regard. We'll see. I'm sure more would help.
Right.
So, and I think as you start to see things even out with BRICS, as far as like how that monetary, I mean, they said that like all the foundies get like equal share, like, so we'll see. But I think once the countries start to balance some of that wealth, it should, I don't know, hopefully it should do something well for them,
Right.
So
we'll see.
For sure. Stay tuned to this very channel. We'll keep you informed.